and gentlemen, I'd just like to thank you for coming along to tonight's workshop on behalf of Rugby League Cares. My name's Keith Senior, ex-Sheffield Eagles, Leeds Rhinos, England and Great Britain International, and my partners in crime are Johnny Lawless, who was an ex-teammate with Sheffield Eagles with me. If you'd like to say something, Johnny, so you pop up on the screen.
Hi guys, welcome.
Again, that's not a fatter version of me. He's just, that's Johnny Lawless. Obviously, this is a serious subject, what we're going to be talking about tonight, but we're trying to make it as light-hearted as possible. So if there are a few jokes, it will just be a little bit of banter because we've got that little bit of relationship going. Just like I said, it is a serious subject, but we do like to keep it as light-hearted as possible. So Johnny Lawless, ex-Sheffield Eagles, Halifax professional rugby league player, and obviously Robbie Paul, ex-Bradford Bowl New Zealand nemesis, Super League winner, which we know that he's got. Also Lee Centurion, Salford and Huddersfield Giants, Bradford Bowl's chief executive as well, now working in the media and obviously forefront of the BBC media team. Robbie, give us a wave and say hello.
Kia ora everyone, coming to you all the way from Robert Town, top of Liversedge, so not that far away, West Yorkshire.
You could
I'm going to try and make it seem like I was overseas, but I'm not.
Say Bradford, Robbie, just admit it. Right, today's session, this is the first session that we are doing on a set of 6, and today's is all about mental fitness. I will pass you over to Johnny Lawless, who will be the host for tonight, and he will conduct the presentation. Cheers, Johnny.
Thank you, Keith. Once again, my name's Johnny Lawless, ex-pro rugby league player. Now I've got a business within the construction industry. Not very exciting. But I also got a company called Minds Matter, and that's about mental health awareness training, and I do some presentation on that. So I'm really passionate about mental health and spreading mental health awareness. You'll probably have found out already that myself, Robbie and Keith are professional presenters, although Robbie does the BBC TV, a lot of stuff. We're not experts in mental health either, but we're very passionate about it, and I hope that comes across tonight. And I hope his honesty comes across tonight as well, because we will be opening up of some personal stories as we go along. I want to tell you about my mental health journey in a couple of slides down the line. But yeah, this is what they put together, Rugby League Cares. It's a really great sessions, a block of 6 they put together, and it's about just giving you a couple of tools what may help you along the way when you get to a struggle or a bump in the road, as I like to say. It's just like having a tool in your toolbox to be able to fix it and maybe putting it right. But like I say, I am very passionate about it, and honestly, and on for me, mental health awareness has been a life changer. And some of the stuff what we'll be going through tonight and over the next 5 sessions after, the stuff what I've learned, and it's made a massive difference, massive impact onto my life. Just what we're going to do tonight, I would love your interaction. Feel free to chat in the chat box. If Keith finds some decent questions to ask as we're going along, Keith will do so. Also, we've got a quiz coming up, and I'd like your interaction on that, please. So if you just want to move on to the next slide, please, Keith. Basically, what we're saying here, guys, what happens on here tonight stays here. You've got our trust that's on our side as well. But we have to say, if you disclose something that puts yourself or someone else at risk, we have a duty to report it and to keep others safe. But like Keith's already said, it is serious subjects, but we want a bit of banter as well. I find mental health really fun to talk about nowadays. I didn't used to do, but now I do. It can be a really good subject. So we need to have a little bit of banter on the way. Can move on, Keith. As Keith's already mentioned, this is part of 6 sessions, what we're going to present. It's not actually correct on your slide, but the 6 we'll be doing is today's is what is mental fitness. Workshop 2 will be stress and coping. Workshop 3, managing negative thinking. Workshop 4, mindfulness. Workshop 5, resilience and life balance. And workshop 6, managing emotions. There's some great ex-players what we're presenting to you guys. Paul Wood, Lee Jewett, Sean Lunn, Kevin Leroy, to name a few, Jimmy Gittins, and great legend Lee Crooks and Colin Maskell. So some fantastic ex-players delivering to you. I hope you enjoyed tonight, and I hope it makes you want to take the rest of the 5 sessions on as well. So I think we should get started. If we want to first slide, Keith. And what we're looking at is, do you have mental health? And what do you think mental health is? Just before I do this, actually, I'll quickly just get the white elephant out of the room, which is not me, by the way, and just ask Robbie why myself, Keith, and Robbie have got a bit of a hairy lip as we're here tonight. So, Robbie, can you just put to rest what the hairy lips are about, please?
Well, it's all about style, isn't it, Johnny? You know, we've got a little WhatsApp group and everyone. So how can we take our looks and our fabulously hyper masculine personas to the next level? And we just thought, you know, let's grow a moustache. Let's bring it back. We rocked the 70s. Let's embrace we embrace the 80s. Now, as we know, it's November, so we're supporting Movember. The head of the game program team growing these moustaches. I think Maskey's on as a listener this evening. Everyone's grown them from scratch. So everybody on the call tonight has grown it from scratch. The only three players that have kind of let us down have been Damien Gibson, Paul Wood, and Sean Lunt. Those three players, I think they all took at least a 2-week run up to get their moustaches underway. Actually, yours looks pretty good there. It's a bit of salt and pepper going on at the moment, Johnny. Mine, I'm a bit worried about going out in the wind because it might get blown away. What do you think?
I think they're called pencil tash, Robbie.
Pencil tash. Well, you know what? I've got that Kiwi blackout shoe polish. I think I'm going to add it at one point. Just to sort of like, I'm starting to feel emasculated by you lot.
Before I define this, what do you think mental health is? You just mentioned the Kiwi there. Before I do go into this, Robbie, can you give us a bit of a background, what it was like as you was a kid, and what did you think mental health was when you were growing up in New Zealand with a different culture there?
Yeah, of course. Look, as you can imagine, rugby being the national sport of New Zealand, I mean, we're both rugby union and rugby league. If you played in the cities, you generally made a decision about playing either rugby league or rugby union for your school. I was a league boy, so through and through. Not only that, so you can imagine what it was like. Rugby from the age of 4, that's when I started playing. So the entire way through, it was always never show pain, never show weakness, never. Basically, the word that you heard all the time was never. Coupled with that, I'm also Māori. My father's Māori. And that's a very masculine culture. So, you know, dominated by the sort of the paternal side of the family. And again, very, very sort of like, do as you're told, never show weakness, sort of warrior in nature. So growing up, it was a challenge to think about mental health in a way where you engage with it. It was definitely the type of area that no one talked about. Everybody glossed over and basically was pushed underneath the wood, and you were supposed to just sort of suck it down, head down, and crack on. And globally, we know that the suicide rates for men across the world are absolutely terrible. But in New Zealand, I think it's in the top 2 per head per capita. Suicide rates in the top 2. So New Zealand definitely has had a problem that they've only recently been dealing with, really like the rest of the world, in the last 5 to 10 years. So hugely important. And if I knew then what I know now about mental health, not only would I have, not only would it have been easier growing up, but I think I would have been a better athlete as well. That's why I think my biggest takeaway from learning the tools, as you were talking about them before, is actually I would have been a better rugby player if I had learned these tools earlier. So that's one of the key things that when we're doing the Head of the Game program and we're presenting to all the adolescents or the teenagers that we're presenting to, I want them to understand that this is like weight training. Mental health to me is like lifting weights. It's like sprint training. It's like fitness training. It's more training to make you a better athlete. And the best thing about this is it makes you a better person in the long run.
Thanks for that, Robbie. Interesting that. I think a lot of us older players are realising that if we'd have worked on more as mental health, we certainly would have been better players. But looking at the World Health Organization, how they define it, mental health is defined as a state of well-being in which every individual realises his or her own potential, can cope with the normal stresses of life, can work productively and fruitfully, and is able to make a contribution to his or her community. In layman's terms, it's how we think, feel and behave. and we've all got mental health. It's not something we all realise that. We've always, the term mental is not a great word to have in that term mental. It's part of his well-being. Without mental health, we can't be overall healthy. If you can imagine, we've got his overall health, and underneath we've got his physical health and his mental health. Now, just to compare the two, Keith, I know you've had quite a serious injury with your knee in the past. So if you've been physically fit, you've done that playing, and you've fallen right down to having a serious injury. Just briefly tell me, first of all, you had to go to hospital, that's correct?
Yep, yeah, I ruptured my cruciate ligament.
And you'd have had a scan, and you'd have been in some kind of restraint for a couple of months to get it back together, and you'd had physio.
Yep, I had to have physio. Obviously, ACL's the 9-month recovery period, so quite a serious injury.
And you've got rehab, and you've managed to get back to being fully fit where you started from. So basically, you've been at the top of your physical fitness, you've dropped right down to a serious injury, but with the right help, diagnosis, physiotherapy, rehabilitation, you've managed to get back to where you want to be. Now, if we can shift over to mental health, right at the top of mental health is his well-being, and that's how happy we're when we're happy, we're confident, or we're mentally fit. We've got good mental fitness. If we had a really serious mental illness, such as depression, anxiety, psychosis, we've fallen right down the scale like we did in physical fitness. But with the right help or medication or self-help or the right direction or seeing the right professionals, we can get back up to good, positive mental fitness. We could have something like a mental health problem, which could be just an illness. It could be flu, or it could be a bereavement or relationship breakdown. But again, with the right guidance and help, we can get back to where we want to be. It moves all the time, just like physical fitness, but we've got two. We've got mental health and physical health, and they're both under the banner of his health, as overall health. So that's just comparing the two. If you move on to the next slide, please.
I'll jump in with a little bit added here, Johnny. From tonight's session, we always want you guys to take some things away. It's what we call takeaways with you. And one of the things I'd love you guys to take away and start sharing this as a narrative. And that is, if we can reframe mental health as just another part of our overall health. We're putting them side by side, our physical health and our mental health, but really they're one thing and they both feed each other. If we can just look at it like we look at physiotherapy, like we look at it going to see the GP, then we can get past so much nonsense and we can really start to make cultural change and make impact in our communities. So that's the one thing. Let's just start to have that conversation, create the narrative around mental health and not being this scary thing, not being this frightening thing, and actually being something that we all deal with and we can all engage with and we can all improve. Thanks, John.
Thanks, Robbie. Thank you, mate. This slide then. So this side, we've all got mental health. These people here all have in common that they've had mental health issues. It's not affected the career, or they've bounced back and they become just as good as they were before. Robbie, you'll recognise that person bottom left. You briefly want to give me a name to that? Bottom left, Keegan Hurst.
Keegan Hurst.
Sorry, Robbie, I'll teach you out. Keegan Hurst, who's openly come out as being gay, which is a very tough thing to do in such a sport like rugby league. Bottom right, you've got Freddie Flintoff. You've got Andy Murray, Danny Rose, top left. Tyson Fury, I'm a really advocate of Tyson Fury. Just over 2 years ago, this guy was 28 stone, addicted to alcohol, addicted to drugs, very poor mental health, suicidal. He's now heavyweight champion of the world. So it just goes to show we've all got mental health, no matter how tough or background you've come from, we've all got it. But you can, if you don't look after it, it can get you in places you don't want to be. Keith Senior, top right, you're there. Keith, can you use a little talk about why you're there?
I shouldn't be on there. It's false. No, obviously, you're talking about my injury. I'll briefly go through this pretty quick, a short tale, because I know rugby's on and everybody will want to get off to watch that. But I ruptured my ACL in 2011, anterior cruciate ligament. So as a 35-year-old, that was quite a serious injury to come back from anyway. But I ended up getting MRSA in hospital. So to cut a long story short, I ended up having 12 operations in 10 months. I had a conversation with Brian McDermott about my contract release next year, and he said that because I was getting old, he wasn't sure if he was going to keep me for next year. So as soon as I ruptured my ACL, I knew that my Leeds career was over. But I still had a lot to offer, and I knew still I had a lot to offer. So I was confident that I'd still come back strong, still come back fighting. But then I got the infection in hospital. So once I'd got that, I had a lot to deal with. So coming to terms with the end of my career, not knowing what my next step was, and dealing with all them emotional aspects of it all. And I thought that I was I thought I was very, very resilient. Resilient's a word that we use in a lot of the moment. And whenever any shit came my way, I could deal with it because I'd always done it all the way throughout my career. Whenever I had any problems, I had my coping mechanisms, and I had things to be able to subside and focus on. Then when my rugby career ended so abruptly, because it wasn't on my terms, I was quite bitter, angry about it. So I struggled, and I didn't know what the next stage of my career was going to be. So when that happened, I ended up finding myself in a deep dark hole. And talking about depression, and when you don't know what depression really is and what the feeling is, you don't actually know where it's going. Can somebody hear somebody eating the tea there?
Yeah, I think it's Chris. Is it Chris?
Who's eating their tea?
I wasn't sure if that were a Zoom bomber doing something else, but it sounds like he's eating his tea.
He's got it. No worries, that's all right.
Sound.
No.
So, yeah, I'm 35 years old. I've ruptured my anterior cruciate ligament. I've got an MRSA infection, and I'm basically told my career's over. I wasn't very academic at school, so I left school with no education. I wasn't very academic at school. Rugby was all I ever knew, and that was my coping mechanism, so to speak. So whenever I had any shit and any problems, that was how I dealt with things. Going to the changing room, as the boys know, within 5 minutes, whenever you've got any issues, you take the piss out of each other, and all of a sudden everything feels okay and everything feels better. Your state of mind changes. So once that had gone away, and I, like I was saying, I was very, very bitter about the fact that I had to retire and it wasn't on my terms. And certain things happened with my retirement that I was pretty angry about. So I ended up turning into a very, very bitter, angry, frustrated man, and not knowing what the future held. It all came to a head when I started getting into some bad habits. I started spending a lot of time on my own, deep in my own thoughts. Like I said, when it comes to the depression side of things, I just felt everything seemed to be a cloud. I'd lost all motivation. I couldn't get out of bed. I had no motivation to do anything. And I couldn't understand it. I couldn't understand why, from going from 20 years as being a professional player, being fit as a fiddle, and always had motivation and wanting to be able to be better, to all of a sudden not being asked to be able to get out of bed and not seeing a future. So I got massively in some bad coping mechanisms with the drink and the alcohol to mask it, just to make myself feel better. And it all came to a head one day when I ended up losing my shit a little bit. I'd gone out with the lads, ended up getting totally annihilated. I was stopping with Luke Campbell at the time, ended up going through a separation. And I ended up putting my head through his wall. I'd lost it that much. And waking up the next morning, thankfully it was a plasterboard wall. So if it had been a brick wall, then there would have been issues. But waking up the next day, not actually knowing what I'd done or what had gone on. And then that day, just sitting on his sofa and just basically crying my eyes out. I'd segregated myself from everybody that I knew and everybody that I was close to. I had nobody really to talk to. And I felt useless. I felt in a real dark place, and I felt like I'd wasted my life. Like I said, I've had a superb career. I've had a superb rugby career that a lot of kids strive to have. Travelled the world and had a great experience and been in a really privileged position. But I had a massive loss of identity. And I couldn't put my finger on it. I couldn't understand why. And emotionally, I just couldn't deal with it. And I just ended up getting worse and worse and worse. Whereas as we're speaking about now, if I'd have had the tools and the thought processes what I'd learned when I was 36, 37 and had more of an open mind, I'd have been able to deal with things a lot differently, because all I had was rugby to deal with everything that I had that was a problem.
Cheers, Keith. I really appreciate your honesty on that, as always. So I do that just because to show, guys, everyone can be affected by poor mental health or mental ill health, as it shows on these slides, and as Keith just expanded on. So if we can just move on, Keith.
I just said, I think the real reason why Keith was really upset when he put his head through the wall.
The money.
It wasn't a plasterboard. It was brick, because brick's more expensive, isn't it? He's known as a title man in rugby league.
I thought exactly the same, Robbie.
Right, they don't have brick houses in Overton, Johnny.
This slide here, guys, it kind of looks kind of complicated when you first look at it, so I'm just going to explain through it. This is the mental health continuum. What we want to get out of this is that mental health is fluid. It moves around all the time. It can move around on a daily basis, a weekly, annual, monthly. I'll explain it first, and I'll come back to what I want to say. Basically, if you imagine this, we've got an horizontal axis and a vertical axis, and it's split into four quadrants. If you look at the top of the vertical, that's maximum mental well-being and fitness. That's where we want to be. We want to be at that top end. And on the bottom right of the horizontal one, that's where we've got no diagnosis. So if we're in this top right-hand quadrant, we're in a good place, basically. If we drop down, we're looking at a person with no diagnosed mental illness or disorder, but has poor mental health. That's somebody who's dropped down, moved around this continuum, but it's somebody with poor mental health, but they're not diagnosed with anything. Moving across to the bottom left quadrant, I'm sorry if he's coming across a bit too fast, but we're looking at a person with a diagnosis of a mental illness and who has poor mental health. So they've been diagnosed with a mental illness, but they've still got a poor quality of life or poor mental health. But moving up to the top left, back up to getting to maximum mental fitness, this is a person with a diagnosis of a serious mental illness, but who copes well and has positive mental health. So with the right diagnosis, the right help, the right medication, somebody with a serious mental illness can still have a good quality of life and be mentally fit. But ideally, we all want to be in this top right-hand corner, which is a person with no mental illness or disorder and positive mental health. Now, everyone who's on this call now, on this course, we're looking at that. You're somewhere on there. I'm not sure where everyone is. I can probably say I'm in somewhere in that top right-hand corner at the moment. But just because where you are now, you don't give you a badge saying that's where you're going to stay. So if you're in a place where you don't want to be now, we know that it moves around. Now you'll notice on the arrows on the axes, you're going to see the word stigma. It's a massive word in mental health, stigma. The stigma's there because it stops people moving to where they want to be sometimes. That stigma around mental health can stop somebody with poor mental illness getting a diagnosis because of the stigma surrounded with it. That could be stigma in a workplace or parental stigma or from the friends. But stigma stops us moving around as quick as we'd like to. I'll briefly just tell you about my mental health journey while we're on this slide. As I had a really good childhood, and I grew up and I fulfilled my ambition of being a professional rugby league player. I'd always been in that top right-hand continuum, right-hand, top right-hand side, where we want to be. Didn't really know much out of it, really, apart from the odd, losing grandparents and stuff like that. But mainly, I were in that top right-hand corner. When I retired from playing professional, I went back to play for my amateur club, which is Siddle, which I've been there since a kid and I've always been in touch with, and still am today. And I went back to play with my mates from playing as well. Another ex-pro gone back at the same time with a guy called Mick Shaw, ex-Leeds Rhinos. So it was great to hook up with these players as well. Now, rewind 3 years, I stopped playing amateur rugby league altogether, about 33. Probably some words what Keith's already mentioned. After a while, I didn't have that balance of playing rugby in my life, but I still had some pretty poor coping mechanisms in going on drink on Fridays and Saturdays with the lads. And I think not having an identity rugby league anymore, we're probably playing up a little bit. Also, high recession, which was a struggle for my business. There were a lot of problems, and it didn't help. 10 years ago, a really close friend took his life and he completed suicide. This was about 10 years ago, about a month after Terry Newton had actually taken his life. So he hit our club, our rugby club, massively. He was a massive character, was the guy called Matthew Smith, a great lad, a great player, only 36-year-old, and he'd taken his life. About 12 months after Math had died, I found myself sliding down this continuum to that bottom right-hand corner for various reasons, for work and the identity thing, and not having that balance of rugby in my life. But I didn't know how I got there at that time, because I didn't really know much about mental health. It wasn't on my radar. Looking back in hindsight, I can see how I got there, because I was doing bad coping mechanisms, going on piss, not looking after myself, not having that rugby, that balance, and it took me to a dark place for quite a few months. Suicide was a common thought, but when I was there, I couldn't see how I didn't know how I got there, and I couldn't see how I could get back to where I wanted to be, that person I recognised. I reached out to my best friend, my lifelong friend, Mick Shaw, told him how I felt, and he actually disclosed to me he'd had depression. He got medication, it really helped him, and he gave me a bit of advice, which really helped. Within 3 months of having that conversation, Mick took his own life, and I was devastated. Somebody I spoke to every day, and I didn't really know how bad in a way he was. But I put myself at that time of my life, I was on my arse. Luckily for me, I got a phone call from Rugby League Cares, and I got a little bit of counselling from Sporting Chance, and he kind of explained how Mick and Math might have felt and why they got to how they did, and it made sense to me. I then got asked to go on a mental health first aid course, which is a 2-day course which qualifies you to be a mental health first aider. And for me, it was life changing. I started ticking boxes of what I've been doing wrong, and I needed to respect my mental health. It then gave me it put me on a journey and other stuff to look into, like self-help books, looking more into mental health and how it works and how I can spot signs and symptoms in myself and other people. I learned how to approach other people maybe with problems. It was a life changer for me. And over a period of time, it got me back up into that right-hand corner of the continuum, back where I am today, and hopefully can stay today. But I only believe I can stay there with the education and knowledge what I've received over these last few years. Now, mental health is fluid, it moves all the time. And this is one of the things I truly believe in. But when you're in that bottom right-hand corner or that bottom left-hand corner, it's very difficult to see a way out and how you're going to get back up. So this is just to reiterate, it can move all the time, but sometimes you need to talk and get help to get back to where you want to be. I feel so strongly about this that I can't say for definite. I ask this question a lot. If Math and Mick had the education and awareness what I've got now, would they still be here? And on that, I think they would be. And that's a massive thing for me to say. So all these tools you can learn tonight and the next 5 weeks really make a big difference. It's not going to tell you everything, but it can make a difference. So that's just going. Mental health is fluid and it moves all the time. Just because you're in a place you don't want to be now doesn't mean to say you can't get to the place you want to be. So right, moving on. I think we should have a little quiz now to break up a little bit. So you can answer these in your head, which I won't. You can put T or F on your chat if you want to do. The first question.
Chat room. Chuck it into the chat room.
Yeah, you go in chat room. You can put. I'll ask you the question. T if you think it's true. F if you think it's false. So these are all UK-based questions. They are about 3 or 4 years old now, but they're all based around the UK figures. So the question number 1: mental health is responsible for 9 million working days lost and costs £10 billion per year. I think that's true. Type in 2. You think type in T. Think it's false. Type in F. Most people are looking at true. True. Yeah. Everyone's true so far. Yeah. Right. Reveal that, Keith, because you're all wrong. It is false. It's 72 million working days and costs 34.7 billion each year, more than any other illness. Frightening figures, frightening stats. That just shows how huge a problem the mental health is and why we need to be doing things like this, looking after his mental health and talking about it.
I think everyone pushed true because they all agree that it's terrible. Those original stats were terrible, but actually the point that we're making is it's even worse than terrible.
Frightening, yeah. Next question, Keith. 35% of all mental illness, excluding dementia, because that's seen as come on as in your latter years, starts before the age of 18. 35% of all mental illnesses start before the age of 18. Bit of a mixture here. Probably say about, most people are saying true, but a mixture of false as well. Right, can we reveal that, please, Keith? Yeah, false. It's 75%. Frightening. So these illnesses starting at an early age, which I always, and this is my opinion now, and I don't want to push this on you. I want to see mental health on the curriculum at schools. We've got physics, we've got PE on the curriculum. Let's get mental health on the curriculum. A long time ago, when I was in high school, I was forced to do a language, which I did German and I did French. Since then, I've never had to use German or French. I would have got a lot more things out of knowing about mental health at school. What would have put me in good stead for later in life, and probably save me a lot of hassle. So yeah, let's get on curriculum. I'm a real advocate for that. But my French wasn't wasted, not entirely. So it's moments like this I can bring it out. So Keith, dear positives to event, which is next slide, please. Right, I guess most of us will get this correct because it's quite we know about this now through the media and stuff like that. But let's ask the question: if you're male and aged between 20 and 49 years old, which I'm just creeping into that still, suicide is the most common cause of death. True, 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 false, true. Most people are saying true. True. Thanks for interacting as well, guys. It's really appreciated. If you want to reveal that, I think just one person said false. It's quite common now, we know this. It is true. It's around 6,000 deaths per year, 17 or 18 deaths per day. It's 75% men. There's no scientific reason why we think that is. I think one of the reasons is because women are better at talking it, and they care more about each other's feelings, and they are better at talking than us men. It just shows talking is so important. But just a quick comparison to road traffic accidents, which you'd think would be really high as well. So we've got suicides around 6,000 deaths a year. Road deaths in road accidents is only 1,800 a year. But we see loads of things on TV about killing your speed and slowing down it causes, but actually it's 3 times more can die through suicide. Robbie, I'm going to bring you in here, mate.
Yep, thank you, mate. I think it's a good time for me to share my story quickly. I think one of the takeaways here is look at that, how wide that what we're looking at there is probably 3 generations. We're looking at the 20s, the 30s, and your 40s, which sort of reinforces it can happen at any time. We're constantly on that spectrum. We're constantly on that continuum. So we've got to address it. For me, my, I guess, dynamic story was my big challenge, I guess, no better way of saying it, came about 5 years after finishing playing. And it actually had very little to do with my rugby league career. In the space of 6 weeks, I went for basically a really, really tough time. First was the birth of my daughter. My youngest daughter, Emily, which actually is quite a beautiful thing and a lovely thing and a brilliant thing. But as any parent does know, and there's probably a lot of parents on there, can be a very challenging time emotionally for everyone. Not getting a lot of sleep. As the father, I'm trying to support my wife and make sure that she has everything she needs. At that time, I also had both my other older daughters in the house and 2 more toddlers in the house. So we had a really busy household. But I'll get on to why we had such a busy household a little bit later on. The second thing was, I think Keith mentioned it before, I was CEO at the Bradford Bulls, and we had reached that about 2 weeks after having the birth of my child. We had reached the point where the club was in such a bad position financially that it couldn't pay the bills. Now, I was the only director in the country at the time. Everyone else had actually gone on holiday. Couldn't pay the bills. Payday had come and gone. I didn't find out till payday that we couldn't pay the bills. And then obviously everybody turned to me. That wasn't my responsibility. And I actually didn't have any authority in that to be able to pay anyone anyway, but it didn't matter. There was no money in the coffers anyway. Couldn't pay payers. couldn't pay the players, couldn't pay the coaches, couldn't pay the backroom staff, couldn't pay the administration staff. Running Oxford Stadium, you have a lot of people at the stadium as well, so couldn't pay people in the kiosk, couldn't pay absolutely anyone, nothing in the bank, and everyone was coming to me. And, you know, as a person that walked hand in hand with the success of the Bradford Bulls, I felt it's such a responsibility on my shoulders. So obviously having to face up and talk to all of these very disappointed people wanting answers and actually having no answers to give them. And the third thing that happened to me was my oldest daughters, Aisha and Mia, their mum passed away right in that same 6-week period. And so I had all of that going on professionally. I had, you know, a house full of people, and she passed away with cancer. So we had the impending death. We were dealing with mum on her last legs, lack of better words, and then dealing with the aftermath of, you know, mourning the passing of my children's mum. And obviously as a dad, I'm trying to be there. I'm trying to be that solid rock for them, help them, hold them strong, be the person that they can break down and cry to whenever they wanted to. At the same time, being at work and dealing with people who, you know, that's their livelihoods. That's how they pay, put food on their kitchen tables, put a roof over their children's heads. And then my wife, who's just had a birth, you know, hormones flying all over the place, and you know, I've got 2 toddlers, my son and my granddaughter in the house as well, and it was just a soup of mayhem, an absolute soup of mayhem, and I was spinning and spinning. I got to the point, and this is one of the things that, you know, that she obviously my mother's children is my ex, but you don't spend 15 years together. When we grew up, we separated amicably. We did 15 years of intimate time together. You can either go completely in the opposite direction, or you can understand where you were. We were kids when we got into the relationship. We had children together. We brought them together, and we stood strong. And actually, the relationship we had post breaking up was like a brother and a sister. We in a lot of cases we carried each other. So what I had to deal with was being that rock for my children, but I was mourning myself without really understanding it. So my world had been really tipped upside down. I was just literally spinning. I'd been down to see the doc, and as I was talking about the New Zealand culture and that meant that very rugby culture and dealing with things and taking that weight on your shoulders. I was a captain at a young age, so a lot of responsibility, just carrying it all on my own. I snuck down, and I say I snuck down because I didn't tell anyone. I snuck down to see the doctors to get some support there and see whether or not they had anything to help me, because I couldn't sleep. I wasn't eating. I was just feeling like someone was strangling me, and I honestly, all my whole memory of that time is murky, and I just felt like I'm spinning and spinning and spinning. And the reality was what I was heading towards was a breakdown. Luckily for me, one of my very good friends, Jazz Athwell, and my wife on the same day. And I don't know if they rung each other and just thought, but they both sat me down on the same day and just fired into me and just talked, you know, grabbed me by my ears and said, you need to look after yourself. You're coming apart. You're not yourself. You're dragging your knuckles. There's no energy out of you. There's no life in your eyes. You're coming apart. I can't leave my family. I couldn't leave, obviously, my wife. I had to be there still for my wife. But one thing I could walk away from was a job. And you have to understand that was like a relationship. When you're as emotionally intertwined with the Bradford Bulls like I was at that time, deciding to walk away from them was like breaking up. It was like a breakup. I was heartbroken because I grew up with many of the people in the offices. I grew up with many of the people on the terraces. I was an 18-year-old when I got there, and I left as a 30-year-old. So it was heartbreaking. But because I was down there, I was at the bottom, you know, that didn't mean I was fixed. And just because I'd taken one of the weights away, that didn't mean I was fixed. I was actually still in a bad place because I felt I walked away and let them down. So I did what everyone was telling me to, and I spoke to Rugby League Cares, I spoke to Sporting Chance, and I entered into 8 weeks worth of counselling, and that got me back on my feet. And once I'd been at the bottom, and once the counsellor helped me climb back up to a place where I was feeling comfortable and confident again, I would say more comfortable than confident, I then went on my journey, which has been for the last 3 to 4 years. I was actually in one of Johnny's classes, did my mental health first aid class, which was absolutely brilliant, gave me so many tools. I've done a suicide prevention course with Rugby League Cares as well, and a host of other smaller courses and learning, private learnings, reading books like Johnny's Pathway and Keith's Pathway, just to make myself better and stronger person. And the byproduct of that is that I can be a better and stronger person for other people. My point that I'm making here, that, you know, I played rugby league. I ran out in front of millions of people on TV, hundreds of thousands of people in the terraces. The pressure that comes with that. But I dealt with that. But what I'm trying to say is life can blindside you at any point. I know now that if the same sort of situation was to hit me, I'd be much better prepared. Why? First thing I do, I know how to ask for help. I know there's absolutely no shame in help. I've reframed it that my mental health is just like my physical health. And if I ever start to dip low, I will physically do things, either start eating better, nutrition, meditate more to get myself back on even key. And then I'll go on a thing to try and make myself even top out more. Equally, if I fall ever lower, I know I can ask for help. I know the mechanisms, the signposts, and the people to get help. It's just like a physiotherapist. That's how I see it. A physiotherapist was there to help me repair my calf muscle, my knee, my neck when I hurt it. A counselor, a psychologist is just another doctor, and that's the way I reframe it. Life happens. Life is going to challenge absolutely every single one of us at some point. It challenged me, and I know it's still going to challenge me in the future. And you know, I now know that I'm in a much better place to deal with those challenges as they come my way. So yeah, that's my story. That's my reason for being here and the journey and the pathway I've been on.
Thank you, Robert. And as Keith, thank you for being so honest as well. I'm sure it's really appreciated. Keith and Robbie, both great examples of moving around that continuum, reaching out for help, getting back to where they want to be, educating themselves on this mental awareness, this mental fitness, hoping they can keep in that where they want to be, but they'll know there'll be bumps along the way, but they've got the tools to cope with, which is what it's all about these next 4 or 5 weeks. Right, moving on, Keith, to the quiz. I will just blast through these next 2 questions. Anxiety is always unhelpful. Is that true or false? Do we need anxiety? Why do we get it? It's false. False, yeah. Most people are saying false. I will flip it on. That's correct. We're all getting this right. Reveal slide. It is false. It says natural response. It says body's natural response to danger, and it helps us to avoid danger. It comes back from when we were cavemen in fight or flight, but it's unhelpful when it's out of proportion to the threat or lasts longer than the threat. A lot of people suffer from anxiety. It's one of the leading mental illnesses, but if you can imagine that feeling you get with butterflies in your stomach, some people live with that day in, day out. So it is false for that question. Moving on. 50% of people with mental health issues experience some form of stigma. Do you think that's true? Bit of a mixture on them answers. Probably most people saying false. I should imagine most people think it's higher than that. If we can reveal that, please, Keith. Yeah, it's actually 90%. There's a lot of stigma around mental health, especially around language around mental health. And all I say to that is, let's just be show a bit more sympathy and empathy when we see somebody struggling with mental health, because sometimes you've got to put yourself in their shoes to really get that across. Which brings us on to us next bit we're going to discuss, which is looking at mental ill health. So here we're looking at the poor side of mental health, the mental health. We can have positive mental health. If we fall down that slide, we can get a mental illness. Believe me, guys, we're just brushing over these because you could literally spend a full day on each one of those 4 categories easily and still be nowhere near getting all the information needed. So just looking at, split into 4 categories there. The first one is mood disorders, which are looking at stuff like depression at different levels, where a person loses their self-esteem, morale for a long time. Depression is diagnosed as being in a low mood for most of the day for over a period of 2 weeks to be diagnosed as being depressed. Then there's different levels of depression. Bipolar disorder, I think actually should be under psychotic disorders, but it probably falls into both categories at some point of the symptoms. So looking at the next ones, looking at anxiety disorders, OCD, obsessive compulsive disorder, PTSD, post-traumatic stress disorder, GADs, general anxiety disorder, which is just worrying about everything and anything, panic disorders, and phobias. I know a lot of players who have quite a few of those, which could be the OCD, the way they do things before the game. It's got to be exactly the same. So that's what falls under anxiety disorders. It's very common. Looking at psychotic disorders, not as common, but we're looking at psychosis or schizophrenia. Not as common, but very severe. That could be stuff like hearing voices, being disillusional. That's you know, you need to do some professional help for that. I think looking at the last one is eating disorders, anorexia, bulimia, binge eating disorder. So they're the 4 main categories. We're just brushing over just to point them out tonight because that literally is another session. But you can look into this and get a lot more information on the internet. So just briefly moving on. Before we start this video, Keith,
black dog.
This is just an example now. I think it's a really good video. I'm sure some people have seen it, called Black Dog. It's about depression, and I think if you don't know much about it or what it feels like to have depression, I think this comes across really well. So if we could play this, please. Sorry, Keith, I put you out of your stride, didn't I?
You have, yeah.
I had a black dog. His name was Depression. Whenever the black dog made an appearance, I felt empty and life just seemed to slow down. He could surprise me with a visit for no reason or occasion. The black dog made me look and feel older than my years. When the rest of the world seemed to be enjoying life, I could only see it through the black dog. Activities that usually brought me pleasure suddenly ceased to. He liked to ruin my appetite. He chewed up my memory and my ability to concentrate. Doing anything or going anywhere with the black dog required superhuman strength. At social occasions, he'd sniff out what confidence I had and chase it away. My biggest fear was being found out. I worried that people would judge me. Because of the shame and stigma of the black dog, I was constantly worried that I'd be found out. So I invested vast amounts of energy into covering him up. Keeping up an emotional lie is exhausting. Black dog could make me think and say negative things. He could make me irritable and difficult to be around. He would take my love and bury my intimacy. He loved nothing more than to wake me up with highly repetitive and negative thinking. He also liked to remind me how exhausted I was going to be the next day. Having a black dog in your life isn't so much about feeling a bit down, sad or blue. At its worst, it's about being devoid of feeling altogether. As I got older, the black dog got bigger and he started hanging around all the time. I'd chase him off with whatever I thought might send him running. But more often than not, he'd come out on top. Going down became easier than getting up again. So I became rather good at self-medication, which never really helped. Eventually, I felt totally isolated from everything and everyone. The black dog had finally succeeded in hijacking my life. When you lose all joy in life, you can begin to question what the point of it is. Thankfully, this was the time that I sought professional help. This was my first step towards recovery and a major turning point in my life. I learned that it doesn't matter who you are, the black dog affects millions and millions of people. It is an equal opportunity mongrel. I also learned that there was no silver bullet or magic pill. Medication can help some, and others might need a different approach altogether. I also learned that being emotionally genuine and authentic to those who are close to you can be an absolute game changer. Most importantly, I learnt not to be afraid of the black dog, and I taught him a few new tricks of my own. The more tired and stressed you are, the louder he barks, so it's important to learn how to quiet your mind. It's been clinically proven that regular exercise can be as effective for treating mild to moderate depression as antidepressants, so go for a walk or a run and leave the mutt behind. Keep a mood journal. Getting your thoughts on paper can be cathartic.
Thanks, Keith.
And often insightful. Also keep track of the things that you have to be grateful for. The most important thing to remember is that no matter how bad it gets, if you take the right steps, talk to the right people, black dog days can and will pass. I wouldn't say that I'm grateful for the black dog, but he's been an incredible teacher. He forced me to reevaluate and simplify my life. I learnt that rather than running away from my problems, it's better to embrace them. The black dog may always be part of my life, but he'll never be the beast that he was. We have an understanding. I've learned through knowledge, patience, discipline and humour, the worst black dog can be made to heal. If you're in difficulty, never be afraid to ask for help. There is absolutely no shame in doing so. The only shame is missing out on life.
Thanks, Keith. I think that is a great insight, a great video of somebody with how it feels for somebody to have depression, and another example of somebody going down that continuum by reaching out, getting out, but still having a really good positive outcome on life, positive outcome look on life at the end.
I will say this though, Keith, you had one job, mate. One job.
So I'd admit somebody back in, didn't I? People keep coming in and out. It's hard work.
I'll move on, guys, because I know we're getting time.
We're back. We stop it halfway through. One job, mate. Push play.
What we're trying to promote is looking out for other people here, and this is a little analogy we've come up with, which is called "Be a Smart Alec." Alec standing for A as ask, L and listen, E encourage action, C check in. So between three of us now, we're just going to give you examples how we can be a smart Alec, basically. So Robbie, Keith, I'd like you to come in on this. We want to talk about A, ask, which could be something as simple as just asking how.
I was typing.
Right, we're looking at A guys, ask.
Ask, okay, oh, okay.
Robbie,
I can't do two things at once, me. It's either got to be talking about Alec model or it's got to be typing in the chat room. And I can't do both things. So, yeah, I love this. You know, we deliver this in the Ahead of the Game program. Yeah, Alex, and this is the biggest thing that we ask the young people to walk away from, isn't it? Take this with them, because this is really the tool that you'll use for looking after one another. And I think there's no bigger driver in society. One of the things with a lot of the mental wellness and mental health program promotion that's been going out over the last couple of years, is a lot of people see on social people, a lot of people putting their hands up and saying, you know, if there's anyone out there struggling, you know, just come and talk to me. But a lot of the time, that's not easy. That's not the easiest thing to do, to make that first step where you go in, do the talking. Yeah. Sometimes it needs to be pulled out of you. You know, like I never went to, when I was telling my story, I never went to Jazz. I never went to my wife. They came to me. They come to me. They noticed, they recognized that I wasn't being my same self. They saw that I was struggling, and they brought it out of me in an empathetic way. They come in and they asked me that question, and it started the conversation. And I think that's one of the most important takeaways from tonight, is that we really, you know, like the other ones, like we reframe the stigma around mental well-being. The Alec model really is that tool also, about making that first. When you notice someone isn't at their normal self, isn't at their 100%, I think we have a duty to look after one another. And that first duty is to ask them how they're doing. And I don't think there's any shame, you know, in the respect of asking. It's not just, hey, mate, how you doing? Because we all have built into us this little instinctive thing where we just say, yeah, I'm fine. Yeah, sweet. Yeah, all good. And you walk off. And I think what we need to do, and utilizing this model, is maybe pry a little bit deeper. If you recognize that one of your friends, and I think this is the first thing, is not 100%, say, hey, Keith, I noticed that, geez, you're just not being yourself recently. You know, you're not being your bubbly self. You're normally talking a little bit more. Is anything going on? And then Keith replies, or, you know, and let's role play, Keith. Reply to that.
Yeah, I'm not too bad, mate.
Well, I hear you, and you know, we all say that we're not too bad, but Keith, you know, you're normally the first to training, you're normally the last to leave, but you know, you've missed quite a few trainings recently. Is there something going on at home?
Yeah, you know what, now you mention it, I am struggling a little bit at home, you know, things are starting to get on top of me.
Yeah, can you share any more with me? Is there anything in particular, anything specific?
I just feel like the weight of the world on my shoulders. I just feel like I can't control it and I can't deal with it at the moment.
Is it a relationship, or are you getting something at work?
Yeah, it's mainly to do with the relationship. Yeah, it's hard at the moment.
And there we go. There's an example, guys, of you know taking that first step, and just if you can recognize, and this probably covers off the first two of the ALEC model. It's asking the question, asking it in a way where we're not being aggressive, but we're just we've changed the tone of our voice. We've changed our body language. We're open to them. There's none of this shut off. We're looking at them deep in the eyes. Keith can't see that I'm looking deep in his eyes, but I was looking longingly into his eyes whilst we were doing that, and then just trying to get to the bottom of what we're talking about. And a core component to that was listening. You know, yeah. He said, you know, he's done that, and then start prying a little bit deeper. So the asking and the listening are two hugely important tools in regards to the ALEC model.
And then moving on, the encouraging action could be: have they got somebody that could speak to this about this? Could they go to doctors maybe? Or any encouragement you can see is what you should be pushing towards. You can just like signpost people going the right way. One thing, we're not there to diagnose people. We're not there to say, oh, what you need is you need 3 of these a day and 2 of these and you'll be fine. We just encourage action. We encourage them to go and speak to other people or get professional help if they need it.
And one of the things that we can do, we've all got technology. Rugby League Cares, if you go on Rugby League Cares offload program, there's signposting resources there. Movember, it's very easy to find signposting there. And if you're the person that's looking after someone, we've all got technology, we've all got their WhatsApp, we've all got their mobile phones, we can send them a link. We say, hey, look, I heard that you were having relationship problems here. Here's your local GP's number, or here's the helpline, the local helpline, et cetera, et cetera. So, you know, we've got resources that we can offer them. Again, just supporting what Johnny was saying there. It's not our job. We're not skilled. We're not tilled to fix them. Our job is just to support them.
I think just be a good friend, like you say. And the last one is the C, is the check-in. So when we've done it, we've asked them, we've listened, we've encouraged it. Let's follow with checking in with a text, with a phone call, over coffee, and when we can get back to having a coffee together. Keep in touch and see where they're at. That initial conversation might have been the first time they spoke about it. So follow with that support. Be a good friend.
And I'll tell you this: it'll be welcomed. I can promise you now. I've probably 2 or 3 of my former teammates, professional sportsmen, the toughest men that I've ever played with, and some of them found out that the work that I was doing with mental health, so they reached out to me. And one of them was dealing with really bad anxiety, really struggling with it. He was seeing professionals, et cetera, up and down with it on that continuum. He was having good days, he was having bad days, he was having good periods, he was having bad periods. But basically just being there, being able to listen to him, support him, just listen to him, signposting towards something. And then, you know, it was about maybe a month or 2 later, I just checked back in with one of them, just said, hey, how's it going? You know, you went through that time. And he was just so appreciative that I just hadn't left it there, you know, at that bit of discussion, just so he felt like I'm not a burden on anyone. And I think that's an important thing. A lot of people won't unload because they think you're going to burden them. You're going to burden them with your problems. And that's actually not the case.
Thanks, Robbie. So moving on, Keith. just before we recap what we've done, guys, just at the end of this course, we've just got a questionnaire you need to do on your QR code. We've got about another 5 minutes to go. I really would be really pleased if you could do that at the end, because that encourages us to be delivering this free of charge to people like yourself. So the feedback is so important. So it has probably overrun a little bit, but if you can bear with us another 5 minutes, because we want to get all these important messages over to you as well. We don't want to skip over anything, but we are nearly there. So just a bit of a recap. We've all got mental health. Mental health is fluid and it moves on a regular basis. Mental ill health is common, and it's possible to move from negative mental health to positive mental health. That's moving around that continuum. Moving on, Keith. This is just about setting goals. Usain Bolt there, I set mine to the highest standard I can achieve. We're not all Usain Bolts. We're just just average guys doing his normal job. We're normal people, but we can all set goals in life. Robbie, I'm going to fire you over to this, mate. I think this is your bag.
Yeah, I'm a big believer in setting goals, but they've got to be that. I like to use, and Johnny likes to use, Keith likes to use the SMART goal model, where they're specific, measurable, achievable, relevant, and timely. So if you have a look at the SMART models in regards to mental health online, you'll be able to it'll come up really easily. I think one of a real important part of it is be specific and make sure that they are achievable. Because what you get, there's nothing better than achieving a goal, right? My goal as a kid was to represent my country. To do that, I'd become a professional sportsman. That was a big goal. But the reality was I had to make the representative team. I had to make my first team. Then I had to make the representative team, the Auckland representative team. Then I had to get into the system. Then I had to dedicate my mind to making sure that I train at 100%, and I focus and I made the sacrifices that I needed to. We see it every January. Everyone goes, well, I'm going to lose weight. I'm going to lose weight, and then they go get a gym membership, and then that gym membership gets used throughout January and doesn't get used for the rest of the other 11 months, and they still pay their gym membership, and it's a waste of money. When you want to lose weight, what you got to do, you got to break it down. You say, actually, what I'm going to do is I'm going to go to the gym 2 times a week, and that's it. You start your goals, make sure that they're achievable, and then when you're at the gym, you go, oh, I'm going to do this set, and you break it down into smaller and smaller bits. And what you do is every time you achieve those goals, I'm going to do this for 2 weeks. This is what I'm going to do for 2 weeks. Once I achieve it, I've won. I've pushed my comfort zone. Now I'm going to set a new goal with further benchmarks. And then you push that, and then I've won. And then what you're doing is you're self-affirming yourself. You do little wins. You're getting better, and you're better, and you're celebrating. And that's what's really important in respect to life. And you can use the SMART approach, the SMART goal approach on absolutely every aspect of your life. And that's what I do, both professionally, personally, emotionally. I execute the SMART goal approach into every aspect of my life.
Cheers, Robbie. That's great advice there, mate. I hope you've got a lot out tonight. I know we've enjoyed presenting to you, but I'm just going to move on to the support side of mental health. What's on there for you, where you can contact if you're having issues, but also if you can go to these places and get advice for other people who may be having issues. So there you've got the Samaritans, which is 24 hours a day, CALM, which is Campaign Against Living Miserably, and the Hub of Hope. And there's also those guys at Rugby League Cares, although we're not 24/7. So there's plenty of support out there. We've all got smartphones nowadays. I'm sure we can really easily get in contact through that way. And just moving forward. Next slide, please, Keith. This is the important QR code. If you could kindly scan that into your smartphone, and I think it takes a couple of minutes. There's not many questions, I don't think, is it, Keith? But the feedback's vital for us to be able to do this and deliver these sessions free of charge, because it might not be for somebody on here tonight, but it might be that thing what some people need to make that change in their life. So from myself, I'll let Robbie and Keith really enjoy tonight, and I hope you've got some out of it.
Keith's on off last. I'll go next, Keith, because you're the man. You know what I mean? Ka kite anō, everybody. I hope everybody's enjoyed it and been able to take some nuggets away with them. Again, part of this is life affirming for myself to be able to play a part beyond the sport in our rugby league community and beyond. So, you know, it's hugely important for me from my own own mental well-being point of view to be able to give a little bit back. So it's really grateful I am that so many people have been a part tonight, because these things are really hit and miss. You guys have been fantastic. I hope that you can come back and join in the other sessions that are going to happen weekly at the same time. But much love to everyone, and, you know, ask for help, not because we're weak, we ask for help because we want to remain strong. That's something that I live by. Let's stay strong.
Outstanding, Robbie. Outstanding, Johnny. Thank you very much, and thank you everybody for joining us tonight for this presentation. Like we said, we hope you get something from it. And we're not professionals, but we have just lived life experience. And probably the point of what we are trying to put across as well is the fact that we played a very macho sport. We grew up in an environment which was all about masculinity. And if we'd have been able to speak a little bit more at the time when we needed it, then we would have probably not gone through a lot of the troubles that we did do. So open up, we can do it. You know, we're showing vulnerability and we're showing emotion. And we're all going through shit, and we're all going to carry on going through shit. That's part of life. There's nothing that's ever going to change there. It's how we manage it and how we deal with it going forward. Make sure it's a positive way. So thank you, everybody. Please scan the QR code. There's also a link in the chat if you can fill that questionnaire out. It would be most appreciated. And again, hopefully see you next week. Thank you. Hopefully you've enjoyed it.